still putting up mega numbers on a week in, week out basis. Will they be able to do this on a short week?
Welcome in to the Husker Afterparty Postgame Show on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. The Husker Afterparty Postgame Show is brought to you by Action Plumbing, AC and Electrical, Gary Michaels Clothiers, and Brandt Excavating. Now, here are your hosts, Jake Bakoven and Nick Sainert.
Welcome into the Husker Afterparty Postgame Show following a disappointing 43-37 loss on the road in West Lafayette to Purdue in a game where Casey Thompson threw 16 of 29 through the air, 354 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Trey Palmer, just an unbelievable evening. One rush led the team in rushing yards on 1 carry for 60 yards, and then clearly led the receiving game as well. 7 catches, 237 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Had 96 yards after the catch. In a game where Nebraska gave up on defense, over 30 first downs to Purdue. Purdue held the ball for 42 minutes of game time compared to 17 minutes of game time for Nebraska. Nebraska also gave up 608 yards of total offense to Purdue, and Purdue had more rushing yards in this game than they have since 2018 in a Big Ten game. Nick Sainert, Jake Bakoven here with you guys. 402-464-5685, the Husker Afterparty Postgame Show. We want to hear from you guys. Honda of Lincoln Hotline, the Starter Heyman text line. A lot of thoughts after this one. It's one of those where, and I'll bring Bach in, but want to field your guys' phone calls the entire show as well. 402-464-5685. It's definitely one of those where, looking back, there were times in this game Nebraska was down by double digits multiple times. And it was one of those, it was one of those games where I found myself a couple times throughout the 4 quarters going, how's Nebraska still in this game? Through the bad offensive line play in the first half. And when I say bad, really bad, I posted a video on Twitter, Bach, I'm not sure if you saw it, where on the same play, both the left tackle and the right tackle got beat within matter of half of a second. And Casey Thompson had to step up. It was on Casey Thompson's biggest scramble of the night. And it just, we wanted to learn things about this team kind of going into the bye week. And one thing that I will say right out of the gate here is that there's fight. There's 100% fight. And I think still, despite losing this game by 6 points, coming into this game, we were wondering, what's the psyche of the team at? And is it truly better than it was, 4 weeks ago or a month and a half ago and things like that? And I think right now there's a lot of Husker fans, including myself, that can say so with a resounding yes. But once again, Nick Sainert, Jake Bakoven hanging out with you guys. We'll hear from Mickey Joseph. We'll hear from some of the players as well. We would definitely want to hear from you guys. That's why we're here. We'll be here for the next hour and a half or so. So around 11:30, we'll get out of here. Just kind of dissecting this game and kind of where Nebraska goes from here. But once again, Nick Sainert, Jake Bakoven, want to hear from you guys. 402-464-5685, the Honda of Lincoln Hotline, the Starter Heyman text line. Both those open for you guys, as well as the Starter Heyman Jewelers video stream. Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, both those avenues are open.
This game, like you said, Nebraska was down 17 at one point in this game. There were times where you're thinking, oh, this is going to get ugly or whatnot. And Nebraska keeps fighting back. And a heck of a game from Trey Palmer. I don't think we've ever seen a wide receiver. I know statistically we haven't, but maybe just in general, I've never seen such a mismatch. And Purdue, to their to their downfall too, they were still running zones and just losing him completely. I don't understand how that's happening when he's repeatedly the only thing really keeping Nebraska in the game. And Nebraska's got a lot of faults on offense, as we know, but it looked pretty good when you look at the final numbers today. However, the defense does not. Over 600 yards given up. Now, there were lots of guys out So, I mean, you can kind of make your excuses there,
Yeah.
but one way or another, I think ultimately when I walk away from this game, I am going to think about the fight that Nebraska put up, and I am going to think and remind myself, I think some Husker fans need this, even after years and years of beatdowns and now losing to Purdue several years in a row, that this is a good Purdue squad.
They played well. Like, Aiden O'Connell looked like a second team all Big Ten quarterback.
Very precise. I mean, and Nebraska, again, to the defense, didn't record a sack, need to finish on a few of those. But Aiden O'Connell, if you listen to the game, and you are probably tired of hearing about Matt Millen just drool over Aiden O'Connell, but he is so precise. I mean, he hits those throws, made all the big plays, the scramble there late on the 4th down play, that all but won the game for Purdue. It was a great game by him. And ultimately, we knew that they were going to put up some yards, but given the last couple of weeks, this defensive performance, you could say they were down a few guys. You could say they fought and all that, but 608 yards and 43 points is a bad look.
Yeah.
All that to be said, though, is overall for Nebraska, there's a reason Purdue is favored by 14 points, because if Nebraska came in and played like they did against Rutgers, this game was going to be a blowout. To their credit, I think they got better. But still just came up a bit short here.
Yeah, I mean, when you bring up the defensive stats, right? Here you go. I mean, like you said, Buck, 608 yards. We'll say that number quite a bit. 391 yards given up through the air, 217 yards given up on the ground, led by Maccabee, 30 carries for 178 yards and a touchdown, averaging almost 6 yards per carry. And more importantly, once again, you get the early turnover, you force an interception in the end zone, and when I thought, sweet, we stood there or sat here on the pregame show and continued talking like there's going to be a moment in this game where Nebraska's defense, it's going to ride on them getting a big play, whether that be a sack, whether that be a turnover. We didn't know at the time, or even a tackle for loss at times. That was going to be it. There's going to be one moment in this game where Nebraska, unfortunately, needed a turnover. And you could actually, looking back, pick 2 or 3 drives towards the end of the game there where you just needed one stop. You just needed one single stop. And I will say this, in the first half, now obviously Nebraska was down 10-0 after the first quarter, and they were down 27-13 at halftime. There were times in that first half where I kind of cut the defense a little bit of slack, because there were a lot of situations where Nebraska would put the defense on the field in a really bad spot or really quickly after they just gotten off the field. And here's the thing. I mentioned it right in the open. Purdue had 42 minutes on time of possession. Just a lopsided affair. 42 minutes and 42 seconds of time of possession. Nebraska had the football 17 minutes and 18 seconds. Now, part of that is a lot of these big plays to Palmer. There's a lot of that's a big play to Palmer. And Palmer had a miraculous game, and give him a ton of credit for that. And just kind of finding the spots in the defense, and Purdue just couldn't cover him. But there was a time where I thought, all right, Nebraska's defense is kind of in this bend, don't break mentality. But holy cow, they really broke. But unfortunately now, I mean, there's a takeaway that you can get away from this game. Ernest Hausman's red shirt is burned because Nick Henrich came out. There were, O'Shawn Mathis and the defensive line, they got pressure, but the biggest problem with this defense right now, in my mind, just from without watching the game over again tomorrow or watching previous games multiple times, the initial tackle.
Yeah, a lot of missed tackles.
It's a lot of the initial tackle. I mean, how many times tonight did we see where Aiden O'Connell, big check down? If they did not have it was a check down, whether that's to Payne Durham or whether that's to Maccabee or anybody else out of the backfield.
King Daru had a few.
Yeah, King Daru as well. There were so many times that Nebraska missed the first 1 or even 2 or even 3 initial tackles. They had the guys, but there was no initial tackle. There was no play made. And when you're talking about in the grand scheme of things, looking back, and you need one stop, it would be nice one of these times to make it 2nd and 12 rather than 2nd and 4. And 2nd and 4 involves 3 missed tackles and needing 2 guys to bring them down, or being able to wrap up the quarterback. Yeah. Like there was just so many times here. I'm tired of Nebraska allowing everybody to just come in and destroy Casey Thompson. And there were a couple Casey Thompson throws that looked pretty poor as well. A little couple ducks.
Oh, yeah, he missed some.
But I think also part of that is how many times has that man been hit? And what does that do to arm strength? It's a true question, because he was hit on 64% of his dropbacks last week. We know how the offensive line has been the entire season. And how many times did you see the tackles, the guards, the center, anybody getting beat, whether it was on just a normal blitz or a delay blitz, that Casey Thompson got drilled and was so slow getting up that over time, those are going to start to wear you down, no matter who you are. And I wonder, we know that Casey Thompson's playing hurt, but how much does that involve, or does that hurt your arm strength? And we get this text on the text line. Once again, want to hear from you guys, 402-464-5685. Jeff says this: quit making excuses, Nick. Come on. I'm not making excuses. Your defense gave up 608 yards. Once again, your offense put up 37 points. You should have won the freaking game. Purdue is not Ohio State. I don't care if you're on the road. There were a couple spurts where Nebraska's defense would say, all right, there was a big stop on 3rd and shorts, but you should have never been in 3rd and short to begin with, because how many initial tackles did you miss? How many tackles overall did you miss in open space? It's just the same thing over and over. And I truly felt like over the last 2 weeks, you had kind of an improvement. Now, it was against Rutgers and Indiana, and I was really hoping that going into this game that you would have been able to prove a lot of people wrong and kind of get everybody on the board with the whole, defense is starting to look a little bit better energy-wise, not bending and breaking so much. But it turns out that the main concern for me coming in, and as I said in the pregame show, was Purdue's passing game against the secondary. But in reality, it was the whole thing. It ended up being the whole thing, because you gave up Purdue the most rushing yards for them in a Big Ten conference game in 4 years. 217 rushing yards to a team that wants to pass it.
At 13 last week.
Yeah, that wants to pass it.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing, I was surprised that Payne Durham was held in check as much as he was, because I thought, and I said this in the pregame show as well, and I know a lot of people said it and agreed with all of us, was that if Purdue is able to run the ball efficiently for 5-6 yards a carry, which they were, they're going to tear you apart in the play action game. And in a way they did, but also in a way they just tore your defense apart in a lot of areas, in every single area. It's just frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, there's no, you didn't defend the run well, you didn't defend the pass well. I think Charlie Jones ended up with 132 yards, 2 touchdowns. And it was kind of an interesting battle. I say, that he's one of the top receivers in this league, and I thought Newsome held his own for a time, and then it seemed there at the end. Obviously, that big what was it, 3rd and 11, whatever it was, the lob to Charlie Jones that really finished it off. And by the way, if he didn't catch it, there's of course the roughing the passer on Ty Robinson. So I mean, there's just a lot, defensively to take away from this. Do give Mickey Joseph credit again, 100%. Because for the second half effort, keep in mind for this offense, they scored 24 second half points to try to stay in this game. And it's hard because you could pretty much just say without Trey Palmer, this game might be 50-21. I'm not sure what it would be, but
yeah.
So I mean, I think that covers up a lot.
But I think here's the thing, Box. Sorry, because I want you to continue that point. You could also argue with an average defense or slightly above average defense, you win this game.
Absolutely. But that's the kind of the problem with, maybe the whole black shirt discussion this week and taking them away for the year. First of all, this is a banged up group, especially when Henrich goes out. You have Henrich and Reimer out. I'm not sure if the Buford decision with Phelan Sanford was injury related or not, but Sanford played the full second half.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's guys that are getting more opportunities under Mickey Joseph. But no matter kind of what they threw out there, it wasn't working. And AOC and O'Connell was just kind of picking them apart. And then he had the help from Maccabee, which again, that's just that's what ultimately kind of kills you, because some of this other stuff you can prepare and plan for Charlie Jones and AOC to kind of go off a little bit and still kind of be, but you can't give up 200 yards on the ground to Purdue, who will give up on the run. And and I thought especially that drive toward the end of the half for Purdue, they didn't even pass the ball. They just gave it to Mockabee, I think 6 or 7 times, and he ran in the end zone. And that's just, you just can't do this. This is a passing team. You just can't get run over. That looked like the Wisconsin or Iowa teams have rolled, or Minnesota or Illinois this year. And it's Purdue with a back, a walk-on running back. It's no offense to Crazy Legs, as they're calling him on Mockabee. He looks kind of fun. I think he's better than just a typical walk-on. But again, this is a team that last week because Nebraska is going to see better teams moving forward, as much as we like Purdue, especially better running teams. That's got to get a lot better, and it just regressed this week, obviously from the previous performances for Nebraska's defense.
I sit here, and so Nebraska's last in the Big Ten in rushing yards per game. And as we get pointed out, and I was going to bring this up in a couple minutes, but we'll already talk about it. Carlos Martinez on the YouTube video stream says next up is Chase Brown, #1 rusher in all of college football.
Oh yeah.
And it's Illinois, and it's Brett Bielema, who knows the Big Ten West and just the Big Ten better, or as well as anybody.
And they got a great defense.
Are 6-1. They are 6-1.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, so going back to kind of the defensive performance tonight, I mean, how many times did we see Nebraska on 3rd and long choose to only rush 3? And we know even when they were rushing 4 or 5 that they were getting little to no pressure on Aiden O'Connell. And if they did and collapse the pocket, AOC, give him credit, I suppose, because he was able to kind of read the pocket, step in the right directions, and either make a throw, or Nebraska missed a sack opportunity. Like they just missed the tackle, couldn't wrap him up, things like that. But how many times did we see Nebraska rush 3 and drop 8, and Purdue just found the soft parts of the zone? And like those are so frustrating time and time again, because when you talk about it's a 1-possession game, and I'm not trying to make it that discussion, please, I don't want to make it that discussion, but as we look at a normal football team here in 1-possession games, you go, man, if the defense could just get one stop, especially in a 43-37 type of scoring game, just if the defense could get one stop on one of those 3rd and 12s or 3rd and 14s, when Nebraska and Bill Busch chose to only rush 3 and drop 8, it would have been great just to either get an incompletion, allow a 6-yard gain. That's okay when that's when I'm okay with playing softer and allowing a 7-yard pass completion.
But especially toward the end of the game, I mean,
that last one it was 3rd and 11. Yeah. You had it on midfield. Give up a 4-yard pass. It's still 4th and 7, and Jeff Brom has to punt that one away, and you have a timeout.
Well, again, they did do a roughing the passer on that.
They did
as well. But to the not too much to the defense credit, because they're not going to get a whole lot of credit tonight. But a part of this too, again, goes to kind of Nebraska's big strike offense hurting the defense, because they're not getting a chance to rest out there. Purdue had 101 total plays. Nebraska had 52. That's almost half, because they could sustain their drives with Mockabee, and Nebraska just could not get any traditional running game going. They cannot pass protect long enough to get a sustainable drive for dink and dunk downfield.
What did we say in the pregame?
The only drives are long balls to Trey Palmer, which thank God for that, man, and what a performance. But it takes a toll on the whole team.
What do we say in the pregame show, Bach? I mean, you and I were doing the segment together, and I said something along the lines of, listen, Nebraska's best defense is their offense, and they need to figure out a way to sustain drives. Now, granted, they put up 37 points, but like you just said, Nebraska's defense was on the field for 42 minutes. 42 minutes. They were on the field for.
That's 3 quarters.
That's a lot.
That's 3 quarters.
And I frankly, I don't think that's an excuse necessarily. That's more of a tell of, listen, if you just need to start finding the running game a little bit. And we thought we had it with Anthony Grant, and I think there still is something there. However, when your offensive line doesn't get a single push up front, and Anthony Grant has to break 1 or 2 tackles right immediately when he gets the handoff, then you're already starting 2 steps back rather than 2 steps forward when you got no push up front. And it's just a frustrating thing. And time and time again, we're seeing that the offensive line, and they did improve in the second half. There was better protection in the second half, But what we're seeing once again, kind of just a product of that offensive line struggling.
And the Anthony Grant factor was just kind of given up on. I mean, and I don't know, again, credit to Nebraska, they did score 24 points in the second half. But again, with what we're talking about, leaving the defense out on the field a little too much, you can't just say run the ball if you're not getting any yards. So I understand that too. But perhaps gave up on it too soon. He had 8 carries at half, finished with 11. That's a guy that was a top 5 rusher early in this season. But again, I think that's something that you're going to have to prepare for with this offensive line going up against these Big Ten West teams. It's not going to be as easy to run through Big 12 or Georgia Southern or some, Anthony Grant's best games are probably behind him because you're playing just physical, tough defenses that don't allow 100-yard rushers, and Purdue still hasn't.
Let's go back to the Honda Lincoln hotline, 402-464-5685, the Honda Lincoln hotline. John's been waiting patiently. John, appreciate you being patient. What's on your mind?
Where this game was won and lost is the line, offensive line, defensive line. When your leading rusher is your leading receiver, this is bad. I mean, if you can't stop the defensive end from getting to your quarterback after he gets the snap, it's going to be a long. Whoever this next coach is, whether it's Mickey or whoever it is, they need to revamp this whole line, offensively and defensively, or we're going to be doing this time and time again. Illinois' line on both sides of the ball is really good. Wisconsin, we know what their lines are. Where this game was won and lost is up front. We don't have guys that can make stops on defense. We don't have guys that can open up holes when we need to. I mean, it came down to that. Palmer had the best game I've ever seen for a long time. But you can't make that big stop. You can't make that big block. This is exactly what we are, and this is what we're going to have all season. So yeah.
Thanks, John. Appreciate the call. Thoughts, Buck? Yeah,
no, I mean, he's right. And you look at the stats, and it's right there for you. The offense, just the line play in general. And again, that was the problem I thought going into the year. They patched together a good defensive line after losing a lot of guys, and so we kind of felt good about it. But again, I don't think that pass rush is quite as much as we hoped it would be, right? Without getting a sack tonight. Garrett Nelson had been playing pretty well the last couple games. Didn't really make much of a difference tonight. O'Shawn actually did get a few pressures, but didn't finish with the sacks. And then just the rush defense is, it's one thing to get a good pass rush going, but they lost a lot with the rush defense last year, and it's been a problematic so far this year. And then obviously the offensive line. The offensive line is at a point where, it's the worst that it's been in recent memory. And if it's recent, this is probably just beyond that. One of the worst offensive lines in Nebraska's history, I would say. But they're trying some different guys. To their credit, did not give up a sack in the second half, so there is that. But it's almost like it's something that you go into the game acknowledging and trying to plan around, and that's why these deep balls to Trey Palmer are kind of your saving grace. And we'll see how often, how much that works. Obviously, Purdue, it was just a mismatch. Purdue did not have a guy to keep up with him, and they failed to make the coaching adjustments and kept sitting in zone and letting him run right by it. So that was just kind of weird, but. Better defenses, better secondaries, better defensive coordinators are going to do everything they can to take a Trey Palmer deep ball out of Nebraska's offense moving forward. And then there's nothing sustainable that they have with an offensive line like that. I mean, it just needs to get better. I don't know how much hope there is for that. Again, they tried different guys. Benhart moved into guard, kind of backup guard. He was playing a little bit of tackle there out there too, but Latovsky made the start. Anthony made the start. Yeah. So they're trying something different, but ultimately, I Casey's going to take shots all year. And eventually he's probably going to go down for a little bit of time because of it. This is to me, it's not too much of a talking point because it's just a known problem with this team going into each game.
Once again, Nebraska falls to Purdue 43-37 on the road, gives up 608 total yards on defense. Purdue ran the ball for 217 yards and passed for 391 yards. They had a record 38 first downs. Purdue did this tonight. They were 9 of 18 on third down.
Is that a Purdue record?
Yeah.
Okay.
2 of 2.
That's a lot.
2 of 2 on fourth downs. Like Bach said earlier, Purdue ran 101 total plays compared to Nebraska's 52. I'll be interested to see snap counts for Nebraska's guys on defense. But once again, kind of just a takeaway. Nick Henrich, we're still waiting on an update. We'll see if Mickey Joseph said anything in the post game. But Ernest Hausman's his red shirt is burned as he played in his 5th game today. There was part of me that kind of made me think prior to this game that Nebraska's kind of wanted to preserve his red shirt, but you're kind of thin right now with Reimer and Henrich out at linebacker that you're going to need to bring in Ernest Hausman, who's a true freshman. So let's go ahead and take a break, kind of regroup here. We might have some Mickey Joseph sound bites after the break here. We'll talk a little bit more about this offensive line because we're getting a lot of texts both on the Starter Heyman text line as well as the Starter Heyman Jewelers video stream, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, as well as Twitter, that a lot of this is Donovan Raiola's fault. And I'm kind of curious to hear Bach's thoughts on that as well. But we'll kind of dive into that coming up next. This is the Husker Afterparty Postgame Show on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. People first is more than a nice sentiment. At American Senior Benefits, it's the mission. If you're ready for a career where you can truly put your customers' needs ahead of everything else, this is for you. American Senior Benefits is one of the leading senior market insurance product distributors in the country, and they're looking for high-energy applicants with strong communication skills. Enjoy on-the-job training, a fun work environment, and unlimited income potential. Visit asbmidwest.com to learn more. American Senior Benefits.
Get an immediate look back at the game from the people who know it best. It's the Tanner's Postgame Show and the Final Word live from Tanner's Bar and Grill at 30th and Yankee Hill. Hear from former players and national champions like Jay Foreman, Rashawn Jackson, and Aaron Davis and see what they saw in that day's game. It's the Tanner's Postgame Show and the Final Word. Live and in person, home or away at Tanner's Bar and Grill, brought to you by Bauer Infrastructure. Only here on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Trendy or traditional, Gary Michaels Clothiers specializes in men's tailored clothing. Off the rack or custom made to measure, there is simply no better shopping experience. Offering designer furnishings, sportswear, shoes, outerwear, and accessories for a man always concerned at looking his best. With world-class tailoring and personal service, all makes Gary Michaels Clothiers Nebraska's premier store for men. Come visit us now at Village Gardens, south of 56th and Pine Lake Road in Lincoln.
Rashawn Jackson for Brandt Excavating. Brandt's been in business for 29 years, and they specialize in a variety of things. If you're looking for someone to get the job done in precision demolition, excavating, trucking, mass grading, and site prep, Brandt is the place to call. To set up a quote or learn more, call Brandt Excavating at 402-474-4113 or go to BrandtExcavating.com. They're also hiring, so join the team today. Brandt Excavating, a part of the Bauer brand, who reminds you, go big Brandt.
Hey, who caught that ball? That field goal was good, right? Is the scoreboard fuzzy to anyone else?
Dude, you have got to get your eyes checked, man. If you're noticing that the game is getting a little tougher to follow, it might be time for a checkup at Premier Vision. They have state-of-the-art equipment, a variety of frames, and great lens options. Visit Premier Vision today, just south of Van Dorn at 84th and Firethorn.
Lincoln's best place to meet, eat, and compete.
Bowling, check. Arcade, check. Laser tag, check. Mini golf, check. Sand volleyball, cornhole, bocce, food, drinks, check, 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 check. The newly renovated Sun Valley Lanes and Games has something fun to offer for guests of all ages. Win prizes in the arcade or challenge your friends in one of the many attractions. Plan a night of fun by reserving your spot online at sunvalleylanes.com.
Sun Valley.
Look at your car. It's filthy and probably has a few dings and nicks all over it. Don't be that guy. Get it upgraded and repaired at Renew Your Auto. At Renew Your Auto, they offer tons of services: ceramic coating, window tinting, paintless dent repair, washes and details, bed liners, body shop, and more. Where can you go to get services like that all in one place? Schedule your appointment today at renewyourauto.com. See what Renew can do for you.
Hey, it's Sean Callahan, and football season is here, and there is one place that has all the games, plus great food and beer specials. Tanner's Bar and Grill at 30th and Yankee Hill. Whether it's Thursday night football, college football Saturdays, NFL Sundays, or Monday night football, there's a great view of the game from any seat with different food and drink specials every night. Try the Blue Ribbon Reuben Sandwich or the Prime Rib French Dip or any of their famous chicken wings. That's Tanner's Bar and Grill at 30th and Yankee Hill. Hey, it's Sean Callahan, and football season is here, and there is one place that has all the games, plus great food and beer specials. Tanner's Bar and Grill at 30th and Yankee Hill. Whether it's Thursday night football, college football Saturdays, NFL Sundays, or Monday night football, there's a great view of the game from any seat with different food and drink specials every night. Try the Blue Ribbon Reuben Sandwich or the Prime Rib French Dip or any of their famous chicken wings. That's Tanner's Bar and Grill at 30th and Yankee Hill.
M-Suits Clothiers, your Lincoln choice for men's clothing 5 years running. Guys, are you working from home these days and find yourself wearing the same sweatpants you've had since college? Visit M-Suits Clothiers and check out our Bamboo Athletic Wear by Task. Task Activewear is comfortable, moisture-wicking, breathable, four-way stretch with anti-odor. You'll want to live in it, and it's nice enough that you can wear it outside of the house, too. M-Suits Clothiers, located at 5525 Red Rock Lane, 1 block south of 56th and Pine Lake Road.
Hi, I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you prevent wildfires.
Dude, I've got this. I've been camping since I was 5 years old.
But I am a camping influencer.
You know what? I'll bet you $5. Assistant Smokey, what is the best way to put out a campfire?
To put out a campfire, drown with water, stir, drown again. Then make sure the fire is out cold by feeling with the back of your hand.
Wait, really?
I'll take the $5.
Learn more at SmokeyBear.com.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Back to the Husker Afterparty Postgame Show on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
No, they hadn't been running it, but they got, they had a good game plan. They, like I said, we had to execute against this team. This team's been playing a lot of football together, and they did a great job. They had a better game plan than we had, and that's on me. I got to get it better.
There is Mickey Joseph on saying Purdue had a better game plan than Nebraska had. And here's the thing. Once again, we'll run through the statistics. We'll dive into this offensive line discussion here. Want to hear from you guys. The phone lines are open, 402-464-5685, the Honda Lincoln hotline. The Starter Heyman text line, both those are open for you guys the entire way here. We'll be here for about another hour or so, a little less than, as we continue to dissect this Purdue-Nebraska game that transpired over the course of the last couple hours. And just to kind of gauge this, right, because we've had a lot of reaction that I've been seeing on the video stream and all of our comments, as well as the Starter Heyman text line, just to kind of give you where we're at. We have Redbeard on the video stream saying our offensive linemen are big and strong and have much more talent than what is, I lost my spot, than what is on the field. You've got to put it on their position coach. He's clearly not doing his job. Then we get this on the text line. And I kind of find it interesting, the two sides. This is not the line coach's fault. This is a recruiting situation. You didn't get anybody to transfer. You can't recruit linemen. That's where the problem is. That came from an unnamed texter. And Bach, I'll ask your thoughts here in a moment. But I kind of have to side with the idea that Donovan Raiola was handed this situation and this mess right now. Is it partially his fault for maybe not making improvements from week 0 to week, what is it now, 8? Yes, it is. Should he be fired? I'm not in that camp quite yet. Now, there's a lot of thoughts on whether or not he was qualified for this job. There was a lot of question marks, even that were talked about at the time of his hiring, of whether or not he was ready for a Power 5 offensive line coaching job. And here we are sitting here a couple months later saying with a lot of people believing that he wasn't, that it was a really bad hire, that there were ulterior motives for the hire, whatever that may be. I think that this problem with the offensive line would be present with any coach unless they were a miracle worker. Because we were talking during the break, Bach, you don't have a true offensive tackle on this team. You have two guards playing tackle, and you lost your probably your best offensive lineman in Nuri Nuili at the beginning of the season, and you lose a second-round NFL draft pick. Now, this is not me making excuses, and Michelle says on the video stream, Raiola was not just handed this job. He gets paid for it, so he needs to do his job. I would put it and relate it to this. Mickey Joseph coached his ass off tonight from what we saw on the sidelines. He coached his ass off time and time again. And Nebraska still lost the game. So are we immediately in this camp that Mickey Joseph should be fired? Like that's the thing, is Mickey Joseph's now 2-2. He hasn't been winning games. He's won two games, against the two worst opponents that you've played over those 4 games.
Yeah.
Should he get fired? Should we be having that? I'm not there yet, because I truly believe that unless you're a miracle worker, you're given this offensive line, it's just as bad, maybe a little bit better, but it's not like it's a top 50 unit in the country.
No, not even close. And Pro Football Focus did their rankings last year, and their returning tackles last year were ranked near the bottom of the Power 5. And that was, again, I think there are a lot of problems. It's we had Brian Munson on the Ticket Water Cooler on Friday, and that I think the question isn't like, where did it go here? What's wrong here? It's just like, how did we get here? Because it's a myriad of problems that started with this offensive line. To throw in Prohaska as well. You mentioned Norden and Cam Jurgens from last year's line. Prohaska, I know we haven't seen too much of him, but him out for the season certainly doesn't help. Again, they're trying different guys. They're trying different looks. But ultimately, I think you're right. I think you need, somebody with a little more foot speed at tackle than at guard. I think Nebraska's got several better guys that are better prospects at guard than they are at tackle.
Yeah.
And I don't think they addressed it in the offseason. I did have a problem with the Raiola hire based on
100%.
All that stuff. So
100%.
I mean, I think that it's not one thing that's the issue with the offensive line. It's a lot of things adding up, and there's just not a whole lot of, well, but there is this. There's not a whole lot of pros to the cons that are just piling up there. Again, I guess the pro is that at least they're trying different guys. But when I say that, this team's got at least a lot of guards, if that were the case, at least they would be opening up holes in them, and they're not doing that either. So
no push.
Whatever, it's a lot of what problem is what he inherited. But another part of the problem is maybe was he ready for this job? Was he hired for Dylan? I'm not sure what was. It's weird. It's kind of an odd situation to begin with.
It is, and that's I guess my main point on this conversation is that I believe that the bigger problem with this offensive line specifically has stemmed from years and years and years of not focusing on the offensive line, not believing. You had a head coach that at the time, it was great when we heard him say, yeah, I hope the Big Ten modifies the system for us. But now hindsight's obviously 2020, but man, the offensive line and defensive line are important.
Well, and it's weird too, because they early on in the Scott Frost tenure, it was like, obviously there was a lot of things going wrong, and the recruiting was hit or miss there. But you would say, at least I was saying, what I do like about them, what they're doing is they're going and getting big Big Ten offensive linemen, size wise,
wrestlers,
big guys.
Yeah, it's this big thing.
But being big's one thing. Being bulky and tone is another, but being big and having the foot speed to keep up with rushers is the biggest thing. When you're looking at tackles. So they've just got a myriad of problems. I don't think that there's a guy in the rock. I think it's pretty evident at this point. They've been now they switched it up a little bit, but they started Benhart and Corcoran for all that time, because they think that those are their best tackles. And clearly, you guys watch as much game as we have. Those guys aren't going to be even mediocre Big Ten tackles. So I don't think they have the I don't think they have the guys on the roster. So how much do you blame that on Raiola? How much do you blame it on Frost or whoever? This transfer portal, it's tough to go out and get probably guys that are ready to start at tackle for a Big Ten team.
That's why they're in the portal. You could argue.
Yeah. Those guys aren't going to transfer too often. So, it's probably tougher than other positions for the quick fix. So it's just a lot of problems.
Now I will like give Nebraska's recruiting efforts, strictly high school recruiting, a decent amount of credit to, once again, I want to be very careful, to a certain extent, because you look at Turner Corcoran, and he was a high four-star, I believe, according to 24/7, he was the 65th best player in the 2019 class. You look at Bryce Benhart, and you look at the other schools that wanted him, and it was Wisconsin, Minnesota, the other Big Ten West programs that at that time when Nebraska was not beating those guys and getting still beaten up front in the trenches, you looked at it and said, all right, well, if Wisconsin's interested in this guy, you would hope that he's got some Big Ten potential. I think the problem now is that we needed them to play day one. It was because the cupboard and the depth was so bare and low that you needed Turner Corcoran to come in and be ready to play right off the bat. You needed Bryce Benhart to come in and play right off the bat when they weren't ready. And those guys that you brought in behind them, I'm trying to think, the Brant Banks, there's a name here from Colorado, Michael Lynn, that we have not seen a single sniff of in his entire career. I couldn't even tell you 100% if he's still on the team. But here's the deal. It's like when those guys are forced to play, your development takes a major step back, because those are the guys at that time in their freshman year they were supposed to be developing. And so it becomes this whole giant conversation of lack of development, lack of just preparation, and the guys not being ready to play in a physical Big Ten West type of division. And that's just the brutal truth. And recruiting rankings are great, but if you can't develop them, it doesn't mean jack squat. Like that. That's where it's just like, it's so frustrating, because you sat here and we rightfully so got excited by the top 25 recruiting classes. And now we're seeing basically the downfall of it, because you were forced to put Turner Corcoran in first season. You were forced Bryce Benhart into the fold early on in his career. And then you had instability in the coaches. You had instability in the position room. I think it's just this giant problem that there's not one big reason. It's a ton. It's a ton of reasons, and there's a ton of problems. And I think it's going to take more than 8 weeks to fix. And so that's where I'm just like, I'm not in the camp ready to pull the plug on Donovan Raiola. Or if it wasn't Donovan Raiola, Ed Orgeron was here, I'm not ready to pull the plug on Ed. Like, I don't care who it is. I'm just not ready to pull the plug yet, because they went out and got Kevin Williams. Great. What's Kevin Williams done this year? He's gotten hurt. And so that takes another shot at your depth. And it's like time and time again, the lack of attention in the previous 3-4 years, and even previous years with Mike Riley, the lack of attention to the offensive line is now hurting. And Nebraska here in 2022 is suffering from those decisions.
And I think, and again, I think that's where the problem is. I think that Nebraska, clearly, I mean, I don't think this is an overnight fix, like you said before, but it's not the remaining games of this season that I'm really worried about. Exactly. It's the next coaching staff. Yeah. And that's why I think that, when you're making that hire, I think that I don't care if you play in the Big Ten West or what pod you get put in. If you're in the Big Ten Conference, you're going to need good line play. Nebraska has not done anything in the Big Ten Conference since Spencer Long and those guys were here, right? Since you had a decent offensive line. And it's, and now you look around, it's not just Wisconsin and Iowa. Wisconsin and Iowa now are actually suffering. I think that the next toughest games are going to be Minnesota and Illinois and Michigan, this 3-game stretch. And then you kind of get it a little bit easier against Wisconsin and Iowa, because the other teams have kind of borrowed their approach. That's why, and I don't want to get into too much about the next coach or anything, but I think you have to look at somebody with Big Ten experience. I think you have to look at somebody with a proven success of building offensive lines, because I think that's what Nebraska, whoever the next coach, whoever he is, or maybe it's Mickey, what they're going to inherit, the biggest problem is going to be that offensive line, and offensive lines you can't just recruit a bunch of good high schoolers and have them be ready. It takes time to build an offensive line. So this is going to be a problem. I don't think just, this year, but in the next year, or maybe even beyond that.
So Jeff asked on the text line, so keep playing. And this was in response to something that I was saying earlier. So keep playing crappy players year after year. Like Nebraska's been forced to.
Well, they're their best players.
They're
You
their
can
best
call them
players,
crappy players, but they're
their best players.
ones.
But that tells you how much they haven't been paying attention to the offensive line and made it a priority. And that's kind of where Bach and I land. I don't want to speak for you, obviously, Bach, but I mean, that's the tough part. Is we sit here game after game and go, man, is that left tackle really our best option? Is that right guard seriously our best option? Like, we sit here game after game, and the brutal and honest truth is probably, it probably is. They probably are. And that just, it's glaring to everybody that watches Nebraska on a consistent basis and has watched them for the previous seasons, that, listen, they just haven't been paying attention. And Jeff asked, are they your best players, or are they just based on on the stars? I would hope. Now here's the thing, Jeff. I would hope that Nebraska is playing their best players.
Well, Hickson and Piper have both been replaced throughout their career with other guys and then fought their way back up. And, I do kind of feel bad for the guys too, because it's obvious and it's loud. I mean, the offensive line is a problem, and, I know they hear about it. So, be nice, everybody out there. But those guys aren't guys with huge stars, but now count Benhart in there as a guy that's been replaced. I'm sure, he'll be getting a look into the future. Bando waited around for like 6 years. I mean, so it's a mix of guys that have waited their time, but basically all of them now have gone on this up and down thing where they've been starters, bench starters. So, I mean, they are, over their careers, they've been given shots, and then, other guys. Greg Austin, but that doesn't mean that it worked out well, right? So it's not just a matter of who you want to play for and all that. They need somebody that can come in here and develop. And again, I thought that was the biggest problem this offseason with all the new hires is, that was your biggest hole, and you addressed it by getting somebody that was going to be their first big job at the college level. That seemed like, and they went out, according to reports, at least they went out and they interviewed veteran offensive line guys. But like you said, I don't know how much of it is to blame on Raiola compared to what he inherited. It's, obviously there's got to be a mix of both, but I think it's more the roster.
That's where I'm like, looking back at the careers of Turner Corcoran and Bryce Benhart, I think those are the two most well-known names on this offensive line. Number one, in part because of their stars. Number two, they've been playing the most, and they've played the most snaps out of anybody on that offensive line over their careers. Like, I can't even say that they're busts. They're playing bad, but the reason I say that, I can't even say that they came here and they would be bad in college regardless, because I just don't. I think the way that they were forced into action and they just weren't developed off of the playing field, I think that just kind of set them back 5 steps before they could even get going. And so they're working from behind. And a lot of people will say that it's that game experience is the best experience, but I just don't know. Like, I don't agree with that when you're talking about up front, a play up front, because Nebraska's done that. They've given guys plenty of game experience from day one, and either their bodies aren't ready, they're not acclimated to the physicality of it, they're too slow, their footwork is off, the communication between the entire offensive line is off. Like, it's just one problem on top of another, time and time again. And so it's like, I can't blame Bryce Benhart for being bad, because it's more of a Nebraska problem in my mind. It's more of a coaching style and coaching decisions in my mind of why these guys aren't like playing up to their standard, because they haven't. I mean, we could argue that the position coaches for the offensive line has been poor, and development's been atrocious, as we know, especially up front in the trenches. And once again, you're forcing these guys to play it when they are 100% not ready, and hoping that it just kind of sticks and it's good enough and you're able to make it work, and they're developing while they're playing. but it's not working. And so it once again, it just like a bright light. It shows that they just haven't made offensive line a priority in previous seasons, no matter who the coach is, because I think this stems from multiple people.
Well, yeah, and two, it's part of what Mickey inherits. So, part of the discussion moving forward is, Mickey, as you heard in this post game comments, was saying he got out coached, and good on him again for taking the brunt of the blame. That's what a coach will do. But I think part of the evaluation can't just be. That's why people, especially pro Mickey guys, are saying you can't just do wins and losses, because wins and losses doesn't tell the story. The story is he inherited a really tough offensive line. And I know people are doing this, at least you were saying that, during the break, people are kind of coming after Whipple a little bit. Again, I said this about Frost's offense last year. They finished 20th in total yards behind that offensive line. It's tough to draw up too many plays when you can't count on a run game, consistent run game, and you can't drop back for long enough. So, I kudos to getting 37 points tonight behind that offensive line, and somewhat kudos to Frost, the previous staff, for what they were able to do offensively behind their offensive line. Obviously, that was more their problem that they, maybe inherited from Riley, but never were able to fix to begin with. But there's just only so much you can do. And again, I just, I think that there's a lot of negative talk right now when we had a school record from Trey Palmer. I know it's the loss, but part of it is just kind of, you just think like, and I said this earlier, but it just keeps coming back to me, is like, if Trey Palmer is injured for this game, Trey Palmer never, made it to campus, what's the score of this game, and how do we feel based on that? Because I've never seen, maybe it was one of the more dominating performances in Nebraska wide receiver history, that's for sure, but I've never seen one player carry an offense as heavily as he did.
Yeah, I agree with you. And as much as a performance like this is great to see from Trey Palmer, it worries me for the rest of the season. It does.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be the same needs for Nebraska every single week when you're going up against Illinois in a couple weeks, when you're going up against Minnesota, and God forbid, when you go up against Michigan in the Big House. It's going to be, you need to establish a running game, and you need to get a little bit of push up front. Most importantly, to get a drive that's longer than 5 plays, and so that, more importantly, your defense stays off the field. That's the biggest thing for me right now. Like, there's no doubt in my mind, and there has been no doubt in our minds, that Nebraska can score the football. They can score points, especially with the deep ball play to Trey Palmer. They could score points last year with the deep ball to Samori Toure.
Yeah.
And however, the worst part is that, okay, great. You gave up a touchdown, you score in 3 plays. That defense is back out on the field against a Big Ten offense that can sustain drives, that runs the ball 12 plays out of their 14-play drive. And those wear you down. Time and time again, those plays, those physical play up front in the trenches from the running backs on the opponents are going to wear you down. And then you eventually get thin at linebacker like Nebraska is right now, with Nick Henrich and Luke Reimer being, who knows what's going on there. They're thin up at the defensive line because they just, who knows what happened. Like, you're thin in the secondary as well because Quentin Newsom's banged up. Malcolm Hartzog's a true freshman. You move Tommy Hill to wide receiver. You're thin everywhere. And so then your backups and your third strings and your true freshmen are the ones that are having to just learn on the fly, and against experienced teams like Purdue. And it's just not a recipe for success, and it's not sustainable, unfortunately. But that's just where Nebraska is.
Well, yeah, and unfortunately, too, a week after scoring 13 points, you score 37. Maybe you can think the offense is back or whatever. The defense is back to being the bad as where they were early in the season. What I will say is that it's probably going to be hard from game to game to rely on one side or the other. I think at this point in the season, you would say, there've been, more bad games from the defense than there has been the offense. But again, I think better defenses, better defensive coordinators, and just secondaries, guys that can keep up with Trey Palmer, particularly in a place like Michigan or something like that, might be able to hold this team like Rutgers. I mean, I'm not talking about, it doesn't have to be that incredible. Rutgers held this team to 14 points. So, I just hope there's not a day where you have, the down 14-point performance from Nebraska, and then the bad, from the offense, and then the bad performance from the defense. I suppose we got that against Oklahoma. And I just, that's gonna be hard to stomach. Hopefully we don't see that again.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get to break. The phone lines are wide open. We got told, Bach, on the text line that we talk too much and to let the people on. But I will say this, the phone lines are open. So if you guys want to call in, if you guys want to call in and talk, 402-464-5685, the Honda of Lincoln hotline, the Starter Heyman text line, both those open for you guys. There's a lot of good thoughts on here that we'll get to. The Starter Heyman Jewelers video stream is going bonkers as well. A lot of people siding with kind of our thoughts, Bach, on this offensive line. When we come back, we'll hear more a little bit from Mickey Joseph. Harrison, our producer, told us that no Trey Palmer in the press conference. So we will not hear from the wide receiver that led Nebraska in rushing and receiving tonight. So we won't hear from Trey Palmer, but we'll hear a little bit from Casey Thompson, a little bit more from Mickey Joseph. But once again, if you guys want to incorporate yourselves into the show over the phones, 402-464-5685. The phone lines are open, and we are happy to get you on. We're here for you guys as Nebraska falls to 3-4 on the season. They have a bye week, and then they host Illinois. We're still waiting on the kickoff time for the game against Illinois. I would assume it could be a 6:30 game again on BTN. It kind of feels like a similar situation where it's Nebraska-Purdue. Same with Nebraska-Illinois. So once again, phone lines are open, 402-464-5685. Let's get to the top of the hour. We'll dissect this loss more coming up next on the Husker Afterparty Postgame Show.
Action Plumbing, Heating, Air, and Electric brings exciting career opportunities for you or someone you know. They are now hiring plumbers, electricians, and HVAC techs and installers to continually build their professional team. They offer competitive pay and full benefits packages that include health, dental, vision, PTO, and 401k options. Action has created a positive team environment for over 50 years. Apply online at actionlincoln.com.
M-Suits Clothiers, your Lincoln choice for men's clothing 5 years running. Guys, are you working from home these days and find yourself wearing the same sweatpants you've had since college? Visit M-Suits Clothiers and check out our Bamboo Athletic Wear by Task. Task Activewear is comfortable, moisture-wicking, breathable, 4-way stretch with anti-odor. You'll want to live in it, and it's nice enough that you can wear it outside of the house, too. M-Suits Clothiers, located at 5525 Red Rock Lane, 1 block south of 56th and Pine Lake Road.
This is Lincoln's home for sports talk on the FM dial. Also online at theticketfm.com.
On the internet.
KNTK FM Firth, 93.7 The Ticket.
Get an immediate look back at the game from the people who know it best. It's the Tanner's Postgame Show and the Final Word live from Tanner's Bar and Grill at 30th and Yankee Hill. Hear from former players and national champions like Jay Foreman, Rashawn Jackson, and Aaron Davis and see what they saw in that day's game. It's the Tanner's Postgame Show and the Final Word. Live and in person, home or away at Tanner's Bar and Grill, brought to you by Bauer Infrastructure. Only here on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Hey, who caught that ball? That field goal was good, right? Is the scoreboard fuzzy to anyone else?
Dude, you have got to get your eyes checked, man.
If you're noticing that the game is getting a little tougher to follow, it might be time for a checkup at Premier Vision. They have state-of-the-art equipment, a variety of frames, and great lens options. Visit Premier Vision today, just south of Van Dorn at 84th and Firethorn.
Rashawn Jackson for Brandt Excavating. Brandt's been in business for 29 years, and they specialize in a variety of things. If you're looking for someone to get the job done in precision demolition, excavating, trucking, mass grading, and site prep, Brandt is the place to call. To set up a quote or learn more, call Brandt Excavating at 402-474-4113 or go to BrandtExcavating.com. They're also hiring, so join the team today. Brandt Excavating, a part of the Bauer brand, who reminds you, go big Brand.
Landmark Implement, your local John Deere dealership, is searching for mechanics of all skill levels to grow with us. Landmark offers a competitive wage, full benefits package, along with paid time off within just 60 days of employment, as well as a 401k and a boot and clothing allowance. Interested in becoming a part of the Landmark difference? Apply now at landmarkimp.com/careers or contact Deanna 402-310-7561 or email careers@landmarkimp.com. That's landmarkimp.com. Landmark Implement is an equal opportunity employer.
Lincoln's best place to meet, eat, and compete.
Bowling, Check. Arcade. Check. Laser tag. Check. Mini golf. Check. Sand volleyball. Cornhole. Bocce. Food. Drinks. Check, 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 check. The newly renovated Sun Valley Lanes and Games has something fun to offer for guests of all ages.
Win prizes in the arcade or challenge your friends in one of the many attractions.
Plan a night of fun by reserving your spot online at sunvalleylanes.com.
Sun Valley.
Look at your car. It's filthy and probably has a few dings and nicks all over it. Don't be that guy. Get it upgraded and repaired at Renew Your Auto. At Renew Your Auto, they offer tons of services: ceramic coating, window tinting, paintless dent repair, washes and details, bed liners, body shop, and more. Where can you go to get services like that all in one place? Schedule your appointment today at renewyourauto.com. See what Renew can do for you.
Trendy or traditional, Gary Michaels Clothiers specializes in men's tailored clothing. Off the rack or custom made to measure, there is simply no better shopping experience. Offering designer furnishings, sportswear, shoes, outerwear, and accessories for a man always concerned at looking his best. With world-class tailoring and personal service, all makes Gary Michaels Clothiers Nebraska's premier store for men. Come visit us now at Village Gardens, south of 56th and Pine Lake Road in Lincoln.
Hey, it's Sean Callahan, and football season is here, and there is one place that has all the games, plus great food and beer specials. Tanner's Bar and Grill at 30th and Yankee Hill. Whether it's Thursday night football, college football Saturdays, NFL Sundays, or Monday night football, there's a great view of the game from any seat with different food and drink specials every night. Try the Blue Ribbon Reuben Sandwich or the Prime Rib French Dip or any of their famous chicken wings. That's Tanner's Bar and Grill at 30th and Yankee Hill.
I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you out because only you can prevent wildfires.
Hey, Assistant Smokey Bear. Call me Papa Bear because I'm grilling up dinner. Do you get it?
Yes, good job.
So what should I do with all these coals?
Don't just toss them out. Put them in a metal container because those embers can start a wildfire.
I understand. The stakes are high.
Ha, 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 ha.
Learn more at smokeybear.com.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Back to the Husker Afterparty Postgame Show on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Bring them out, bring them out. Bring them out, bring them out. Bring them out, bring them out. Bring them out, bring them out.
I need rest. We all need it, but I know for sure health is the main thing at quarterback. Taking hits and landing on both my shoulders as a throwing quarterback, it's not ideal. You see guys all around college football. Bryce Young, Aiden O'Connell played tonight with a rib injury. So guys are banged up, but, taking hits and landing on both my shoulders, kind of wearing some extra padding on them underneath. But, once the adrenaline wears off, the soreness kicks in, and I definitely need a bye week at this time. All week I was thinking about this game, but also looking forward to the bye week, being able to rest my arm and just take care of my body for sure. So it came at a perfect time.
Back here on the Husker Afterparty Postgame Show, after the Huskers fall to Purdue 43-37, they fall to 3-4 on the season. That was Casey Thompson just kind of talking about the bye week coming up and how he just kind of needs rest. Let's back here on the Husker Afterparty Postgame Show, sponsored by Action Plumbing, Heating, AC, and Electrical, Gary Michaels Clothiers, and Brandt Excavating. Let's go right to the phone lines. Bobcat has been waiting through the commercial. Bobcat, how's it going? Appreciate you being patient. What's on your mind?
Hey, man, great show. You guys are the best. Morning, night, and afternoon, wherever. But hey, my point is when are we going to establish the fact that we need so much work on the offensive line? Mm-hmm. And I know you've addressed that a lot. Second, why are we passing 4th and goal? And I'd like you to address that again. And then third, when are you going to get your signal further over the Platte River? Because I have to commute to Omaha every day.
Well, Bobcat, I would tell you this:
and
that
we
have an app, man. Go download the app.
You guys are the best.
Thanks, Bobcat. I would say this: we have an app that you can download. That the signal works everywhere. It'll work in in Omaha across the Platte River. It'll work in Western and Chadron, Nebraska. It'll work in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and it'll work in Germany. So you're able to listen wherever you are with the app. Now, so let's kind of address this here. Bach, why pass it on 4th and goal? The basic and just initial thought in my mind is that you didn't have faith in your offensive line to get 1 yard of push.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the running stats tonight. The biggest runs were the 60-yard end-around reverse deal to Trey Palmer, which, by the way, I just saw this stat. First FBS player this century with at least 225-yard receiving yards and 50 yards rushing in a game. So very historic night for Trey Palmer. But the rushing yards, 60 yards for him. There's the 31-yarder for Thompson, but he still finished with all the sacks with -2. And then, you have Ramir Johnson with that 117-yard run. Other than that, they just couldn't get anything going at all. I mean, Yant was 4 for 11. Grant was 11 for 35. I don't know. I like, usually I agree with that. Usually but this, after watching this offensive line, I mean, the strength of this team is to sling the ball as quick as, without giving the offensive line long enough to get you beat up. So, I mean, I kind of get it. I mean, most football games, I will say, absolutely run it right up the middle. But, it's not like, and to that, I think that was the one where Casey missed Alante Brown too.
I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah.
Nebraska loses this game by 6 points, and they had an opportunity. They should have gotten another touchdown on the board with a pass to Alante Brown. Casey Thompson was asked about that in the postgame presser. Here's what he had to say.
If it was routes on there, I mean, I hit that 10 times out of 10. The reason why I was trying to just loft it, because we had 2 guys underneath the receiver, and they had some defenders underneath there. So you don't want to throw it on a line drive because somebody could jump up and pick it off. But you also got to touch it up enough just to get it over the defense and drop it in. Like I said, I just barely overthrew it on that. Miss Alante. That was unfortunate on that. We came up with 3 points, but we need 7 for sure against a good Purdue team. But no, it wasn't the fact that he was open. I saw him as soon as he came off the line of scrimmage. I just missed the throw. Like I said, last few weeks, did a good job of making throws when I need to make the throws, and tonight I didn't make them. So didn't make all the throws that I needed to. Had a few that kept us in the game, but definitely not enough to win the game. That's how I feel about it.
So there you go. There's Casey Thompson kind of just walking through the missed pass to Alante Brown. All right, let's go back to the phone lines, 402-464-5685. We're joined by Bruce from Oregon. Bruce, how's it going?
Hey, it's going pretty good. A couple mistakes, that one you're just talking about. I'm pretty positive. Team, played really good against a good team. If it wasn't for the mistakes, Nebraska probably wins this game tonight. The defense got tired, but I'm just trying to think of the positives. Every week this team has got better. And I mean, for the last few years, we weren't seeing this kind of play. We've been in these games. We've got 2 under our belt that we've, especially on the road, we beat Rutgers. We beat Indiana and stuff at home. But my thing is, I just want them to go to a bowl game. I could care less about the Big Ten. Even with the mistakes tonight, and the guys were getting knocked down. So
yeah,
thanks a lot, guys.
Appreciate it, Bruce. I definitely want to talk a little bit about the defense because we've spent a big portion of this show on the offensive line, and rightfully so, probably with the offense. But I kind of want to transition to the defense here in a couple minutes. But phone lines are open: 402-464-5685, the Honda Lincoln Hotline, the Starter Heyman text line. Once again, Purdue held the football for 42 minutes and 42 seconds, while Nebraska held the football for 17 minutes and 18 seconds. And part of that's because, Nebraska had a couple of drives where it was 3 plays and they scored a touchdown, and 4 plays and they scored a touchdown. And I suppose on one note, if we want to look at it positive, give credit to Nebraska for finding a way to continue to answer when Purdue would score a touchdown. But like Nebraska at some point has to get the running game going. And Bruce, you mentioned like the Big Ten West, you'd rather go to a bowl game. I think there's a lot of people that might be in that boat. Nebraska sits right now, just for fun. Let's talk about it a little bit. Nebraska sits third in the Big Ten West rankings right now with 2-2. And they have two crucial matchups following this bye in back-to-back weeks. It's top 25 Illinois, who beat Minnesota at home today. And then the following week, it's Minnesota comes to Lincoln as well. And the following week, you go to Michigan, and then that week, Illinois and Purdue play. And so those at that time you would expect would be the top two teams in the Big Ten West. And so if you want to kind of grasp at straws or even invite the possibility of having this discussion of where you can go, Nebraska's not out of it. It's just they're going to need a lot of things to happen.
Yeah, and I don't know if if we're looking at it for now, Wisconsin, I think it's the only team with 3 losses in the Big Ten West. I don't think you're going to win the division with 3 losses. It could happen. But so now if you're Nebraska, your margin for error is 1 game. If that's the case. But it's just hard to imagine that not being the case. I think that's kind of fun while you're there. I thought if Nebraska won tonight, you could start to seriously kind of talk about it. But I think that there's, it's an obvious statement. This seems much more likely to get to 6-6 than it is to get to, the 8-4, 9-3 that you would need to probably be in that discussion. And so, that I think that's still a massive win and might get Mickey the job if you go bowling.
Yeah.
So I think that needs to be more kind of the goal, the outlook of this ultimately. But it's not from a lack of like being blown out of the water, at least. It's not like, hey, you can't match up with Purdue or they're not going to beat, and you probably Michigan might be the team that you would probably say that. But, I think they're going to play close to Illinois and Minnesota.
I do too.
I don't necessarily expect them to win those games, much less both of those games. So I just think that discussion was always kind of silly, and Mickey Joseph probably thought that discussion was kind of silly. He said, look at the West at the end of the year rather than right now.
Exactly.
It's nice to be on top for a week, but guys, Nebraska designed this season to be on top for a week. If they would have beat Northwestern, they would have been top in the Big Ten West for a week. So it's not a crowning achievement.
Yeah, I agree. Axel Foley on the text line says, I don't see any way to complain about scoring too fast. What? And I think it's not that we're complaining about scoring too fast. It's the idea that we can't sit here 8 games or 7 games into the season and say Nebraska has a sustainable running game with their running back for the 4th straight year. And it's not that we're necessarily complaining, but when your defense gives up 608 yards to Purdue, you don't really want to put your defense out there more than you have to. But when you only have drives that are 3 plays or you go 3 and out because you can't run the ball, that's when there's a problem. Because in a way we can turn it around, and yes, the deep pass plays work tonight, but what happens when you play Michigan and they can keep up with Trey Palmer? What happens when you play in the snow and the ball gets slick and you can't throw the ball 50 yards down the field? The deep pass plays are great right now in the early seasons and when it's just now getting a little bit chillier, but you got to figure out sustainable ways to win a ball game. And right now I can't sit here with full certainty saying that if Nebraska needed to slow it down and get 3 rushes and get a first down, they could do it. Not because Anthony Grant's not a tremendous talent, but it's because he has to break 1 or 2 tackles as soon as he gets handed the football when he's 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage, because Nebraska's offensive line gets beat in multiple positions. It's just frustrating.
And the scoring too quick thing too. I mean, it's not too problematic. Obviously, if it happens here and there and you get excited about it. And that was the recipe. That's how Nebraska kept in this game. And again, I don't know if I've ever seen such a lopsided total plays count. Like they almost doubled. They had over 100 plays. You don't often see somebody get 100 plays either. So obviously you take it any way you can get it, but it's not helping your. It's not that you worry about it not hurting your defense too much, but it ultimately does kind of take a toll.
Yeah, and Axel Foley says, other than tonight, we've been running the ball well. Last week, Anthony Grant had less than 50 yards, and tonight he finishes on 11 carries for 35 yards. I'm trying to look back, like Indiana. I can't remember what he finished with. It was, so he had a big game against Indiana, but Indiana's rushing defense was bad.
Yeah.
And like 107th in the country, I believe.
Well, and that's the thing is that, and again, we keep saying this, but the remaining schedule is more like Purdue and Rutgers type of more like Rutgers. Yeah, and Purdue and Rutgers type of defenses that are top 30 defenses and rush defenses that don't allow, so this is going to be, this is, it's not like, okay, well, Grant had a few bad games, he's going to be returned to form.
Yeah.
It's probably more likely that, this is with that offensive line, like you mentioned, this is more likely what you're going to get out of the running game for the remainder of the season, because all you have left is a bunch of top 30 rush defenses.
Yeah. And that's just the normal Big Ten West a little bit,
right.
I suppose.
Right.
I mean, and frankly, like, that's one problem with Nebraska. I mean, you can argue Nebraska's rush defense is worse than the Big Ten, and not just the Big Ten West, the worst in the Big Ten overall. And you allowed 217 rushing yards to a Purdue team that doesn't want to run the ball, and if it doesn't work early, will give up on it in a heartbeat, and is okay with having Aiden O'Connell throw the football 55 to 60 times in a game if it means winning the game.
Somewhat sad too, because I don't know how much people care about those rankings, but Nebraska in almost all defensive rankings, because of the hole they dug early in the season before Bill Bush took over, despite the fact that they played great the last 2 weeks, was still in the hundreds, triple digits for all those rankings. Obviously tonight is going to keep them there.
Yeah, let's go to the Honda of Lincoln hotline where we're joined by Mr. Derek Pearson. Hello, DP. How's it going?
What's happening, guys?
Oh, not a whole lot. Just trying to dissect this win a little bit. What was your thought on this one?
Well, I did want to ask you how you felt. Do you think – I had a couple of questions. One, do you think this team – do you feel – are you happy with the team? Are you satisfied? Are you – what's the word that comes to mind when you're talking about where the team is now?
I think I would say intrigued or curious still. And that would be the same answer that I think I would have given after Rutgers even.
Right. Do you think they've gotten better?
I want to say in terms of in a mental space and in attitude and energy, I think so. But it's hard to say with conviction after you give up 600 plus yards to Purdue, unfortunately.
Remove the Purdue part.
Mm-hmm.
Remove the Purdue part. If you simply saw the way they played, does it matter who they were playing against?
I do not think so.
Okay. There were a couple of things in play, and I had to do a couple other shows that people asked me to do around the country. And what kept popping up was that the time of possession, of course, that's been a topic, and the folks on air brought it up, Matt Nolan brought it up. I often ask this question, especially I've had this conversation with Dave Foreman.
Yeah.
What is the number one responsibility of the offense?
Sorry, you cut out there a little bit, DP. Could you repeat
that? What's the number one responsibility of the offense?
Probably to have sustainable drives and score the football.
Points.
Yeah.
It's not the job of the offensive coordinator to manage time. It's his job that when he gets – think about it this way. This offense scored 37 points in 17 minutes?
Yeah. Yeah.
In 17 minutes. There's a scoreboard. And the other stuff is for other people. It's the defense's job to not allow points, no matter how many minutes they're on the field or not. It's not Mark Whipple's job to manage the defense. It's his job that when they get the ball, they score points, because that's the end goal. That's the ultimate responsibility. His job is not to manage time. You can manage time and score 23 points when you could have, in fact, scored 37 points, which is what they did. So I pondered that conversation with people. So, yeah, they were only on the field 17 minutes. The defense was on for 44 minutes. Okay. It's ultimately up to Bill Bush and the defensive players to get themselves off the field. There is a way to get off the field. Like, there's a way.
Getting stops.
You have 3 downs.
Yeah.
Figure out how to stop somebody and give the ball back to the offense that scores 37 points in 17 minutes.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and
but DP,
100%. I think we do need to give the offense a little bit of credit, because when one of the big criticisms over the last couple years, and obviously there's a new person in charge, both in Mark Whipple and Mickey Joseph as well, that when they found something that was working, they kept going to it tonight as well. And that's been a criticism of when the running game or the throwing game in previous years has been working, they've abandoned it or just went away from a certain player that's been hot. And I guess one compliment we need to give the offensive staff tonight was that they continued going to Trey Palmer because it was a surefire success.
37 points in 17 minutes.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. It's remarkable how we get locked into conversations that don't really tell the story. The story is this, that you had the greatest pass receiving night in Nebraska history. And like to talk about the moment, like to actually be in a moment in a competitive game where each of those yards mattered, right? As a matter of fact, we probably should have found a way to give them the ball a couple more times in that space. I felt proud of the guys for the way they battled. I didn't like the end result, but I did feel good about the pride. So I was just curious about whether you guys were proud of the team, whether you had connected to them in any way. I was just curious. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, DP, I was going to say, and first of all that stuff is true. First of all, Nebraska, not favored to win this game. They kept this game closer than what the experts thought it would be. Like you mentioned, the record-breaking performance by Trey Palmer, something we'll never forget. But I did want to ask you, because I know, especially you're an offensive coach. Is there something to also playing complementary football? I know that ultimately the points do matter, but when you think of like a Mike Leach offense or something like that does, as opposed to the Big Ten, I guess, traditional, what you see from Minnesota, time of possession matters, all that sort of stuff. I know, I guess, would you say that those that are looking at that as maybe a problem tonight, and it is the weirdest thing to say, well, they scored too quick, right? But is there something to that discussion?
No. I've never been in a room, in an offensive room, where the conversation was to manage the game. That's not the job of an offense. That's why there's a scoreboard and a time clock. Like, those are the things that are on a scoreboard. Those are the things that matter. The stats are for other people. Within the room, and the job of the offense itself, of every person on offense, is to put points on the board. You need plays to be able to score. That's why they defend the end zone. That's why they're not defending the sideline. You have boundaries, preset boundaries, and preset time. My job as an offensive coordinator, my job as a quarterback, my job as a receiver is to score. It's to score. It's not to manage the game. That's illogical thinking for a game where points are the finite definition of winning and losing.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And my mind is my gears in my mind are now, kind of turning a little bit, DP, trying to think of all these angles, because it's interesting.
Well,
it's very.
Nick, think about it this way in baseball. You can take it to baseball.
Yeah.
And say, again, you get into pitch count, you get into balls and strikes, you get into all those things. But ultimately, what decides it? When you get a bat in your hand, it's not your job to think to protect your team defensively. It is your job to put runs on the board.
Yeah.
That's the sole purpose of it.
Yeah.
So,
and in a way,
first thing first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess in a way, you could argue that if the defense gets stops, your offense is going to have more time of the possession because they'll have the football more often and for longer periods if your defense is able to get off the field.
If I can score 70% of the time I have the ball, defensively, you should be better. You should play better. You should pitch better. You should defend better. You should. In theory, you should do all those things better with less pressure, less accountability, responsibility to having to put a 0 up on the board. Now, it's great if you put a 0 on the board. But even if you put a 0 on the board, I still want to run up the points offensively. That's my job. So points is the thing. Like, win the game. It's not let's not play chess and maneuver and get lost in it. Keep the first thing first, which is That scoreboard matters. And at the end of it, you should figure out a way offensively to score more points and defensively to allow fewer. That's the simplicity.
Yeah. Thanks, Hey, DP, I appreciate you calling in. That was interesting stuff. I appreciate it.
We're just having fun on Saturday night. I appreciate what you guys keep holding it down, man. Good job tonight with the callers. Good job managing all this stuff. We appreciate you.
Yeah, get some
Top
sleep.
to bottom, man. Appreciate you. Really do.
There is Mr. DP. There he is as he goes. And I guess there's interesting conversation to be had about that. And we'll kind of wrap it up. Let's go ahead and go to our final caller. Is it Bach, Harrison? All right. So Bach, we have somebody, a caller that says their name is Bach. Bach, appreciate you being patient. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing?
Not too bad. What's up?
Yeah, that's about what I was going to say. If the defense wants to get off the field, defense got to get off the field.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate it, Bach. I appreciate it. That was quick. Straight to the points. I feel bad having you wait and then saying just that one line, but I appreciate that. And yeah, it's going to be kind of an interesting. There's going to be a lot of discussion on it as we go through this next week, and not just next week, but the following week as well as we prepare for Illinois. I'm curious to hear. We won't hear from Mickey Joseph this next week with the bye week, but I am curious to find out the following week, how did they approach this bye week in terms of days off and rest and defensively. I mean, where do you go from here? And because right now, average would be a step up and a step in the right direction. And once again, I think a lot of it starts with, as we've said multiple weeks, the prior weeks, a lot of it starts with tackling. And Bach, you said during the break that a lot of times when other teams, you'll watch other teams on TV or other games, one guy will force a stumble, at least slow up the ball carrier. And that, like, if a flat is a perfect example, a pass in the flat. For the initial guy will make him stumble, will make him slow down at least a little bit. And in a matter of a couple seconds, there's 2-3 guys right there.
Yeah.
And when that's the case, I mean, that's sometimes we see that from Nebraska, but most of the time you see one guy miss, then another guy comes in and misses, and then another guy comes in, might get him by his shoestrings, or he misses, and it breaks off for a 12-yard gain. When you sit there and you just kind of start pounding the table and slapping your forehead going, man, should have been a 2-yard loss, but instead here it is, 2nd and 2, and third, or they converted on 3rd and 11 on a check down. When you're making the quarterback and the offensive ball carrier look a lot more impressive than they should. And it's just one of those things that's frustrating, unfortunately. But once again, Bach, let's go ahead and get your final thoughts. We'll wrap this baby up.
Well, I think that, again, we got to do our player of the game. I'm not going to spoil that.
Yes, exactly.
But I will go ahead and mention Trey Palmer because just a very memorable game. Beats the all-time record for Nebraska for receiving yards past J.D. Spielman, who usually was doing that mop-up duty. Mm-hmm. So I think it's good to have a real record here. And again, like DP said, probably would have been better off giving Trey the ball a little bit. Like they caught on and they took advantage of the fact that nobody could cover Trey. And if they had figured that a little bit earlier, maybe they'd score some, more points in the first half. But this is going to be very memorable for that reason. And then, the other thing is, again, this is a team, a lot of flaws, but, special teams blocked again, another blocked punt. There are areas that they're improving. Yeah. This was not a game they were supposed to win. They fought, they played tough, lots of improvements still to make. But I do think that once again, they got better and they have obvious holes that they're going to have to get around every game. And, we got to kind of prepare for that too in our headspace as fans and media and whatever.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we didn't even get to talk about the special teams and Phelan Sanford being able to make to block a punt. And that's good to see. It's their 3rd blocked punt of the season. And I would argue that is the Bill Bush effect. Like that is there are proven and we can tangible examples now of how it benefits you having a full-time special teams coordinator.
Tommy Hill's actually returned game tonight. Like, kick return was a little better.
It was better, and we might get the argument of that we're grasping at straws, but right now that's kind of what you do. And we've gotten a lot of texts and questions on the video stream of, what's the coaching search look like after this? Right now, my advice is just try to live in the moment because Nebraska's not going to name their next head coach over this next week. And the perfect example and kind of way that this is going to, or a perfect example of how this coaching search and this discussion is going to transpire over the next couple months or weeks, I suppose, while Nebraska finishes and navigates the last couple weeks of their season, is going to be look at the conversations we were having and the names that were being dropped when Scott Frost got fired initially, and how many of those names are still here. Like, and I don't want to get deep into it, so that's why I don't necessarily want to. I talked about it at the end of the show.
Yeah.
But I mean, think about it. Urban Meyer, you haven't heard his name floated around Nebraska in the last couple of weeks. Dave Aranda, same story. Matt Campbell, same story. Because now they're starting to lose, and now we're hearing newer names. Like, it's going to be this regurgitation of just names every couple weeks, and those are going to be the hot names out there. So my advice is just live in the moment. And here's the deal: Mickey Joseph gets to a bowl game or close to it, then we're going to have a serious conversation on why Mickey Joseph should be the head coach.
Well, and lastly, I've seen a lot of this on Twitter too. Did tonight help Mickey Joseph's case or hurt Mickey Joseph's case for the head coaching job? I don't think it moved it too much one way or the other. I think, again, like you said, I think that there's going to be plenty more opportunities. I think that it was, again, another solid performance, better than the experts thought it would be. Things to get way excited about, things to get very frustrated about, and still an ongoing story. But I guess that would be my answer to that question is I don't think that this moves the needle too much one way or the other.
No, I agree with you. It is time for us to announce the American Senior Benefits Player of the Game. Now, normally I will say we usually do a poll question for this, but I chose not to do a poll question because it's unanimous tonight. The American Senior Benefits Player of the Game goes to Trey Palmer, the Huskers' leading rusher. Yes, you heard that right. The Huskers' leading rusher with 1 carry on 60 yards, and the Huskers' leading receiver on 7 catches, 237 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. So once again, the American Senior Benefits Player of the Game is wide receiver Trey Palmer for his efforts tonight in Nebraska's 43-37 loss. But once again, American Senior Benefits helping seniors get quality insurance that they need. Let's go ahead, and we got about a minute left here, Bach.
Oh, I was just going to say one final thing with Trey Palmer is regardless of how the season goes, I don't know if they win another game. I think they do. I'm just saying worst comes to worst. I think that Trey Palmer is going to put up a season for the record books for Nebraska, and we're going to be debating if he's one of the best Nebraska receivers of all time. And I think that the way he's been playing, it might just be 1 year Trey Palmer. I mean, that guy, it looks like the best receiver I've seen in a Husker uniform.
That's what I was just going to say. There were a couple NFL scouts in West Lafayette tonight. Initially, probably to watch Travis Vokalek and Payne Durham, but now their eyes are on Trey Palmer.
Oh, yeah.
So that'll do it for us on the Husker After Party Postgame Show. Thanks again to all of our sponsors, Gary Michaels Clothiers, Action Plumbing, Heating, AC, and Electrical, and Brandt Excavating. Next week, we are off. It's a bye week, and we will lead you into Illinois on the 29th. Plenty of Husker coverage coming your way. But as always, go Big Red.
Vershawn Jackson for Brandt Excavating. Brandt's been in business for 29 years, and they specialize in a variety of things. If you're looking for someone to get the job done in precision demolition, excavating, trucking, mass grading, and site prep, Brandt is the place.